I've been losing sleep. I don't think I'm particularly special in that regard. I think everyone's been losing sleep these days. Global pandemic tends to do that to people. Yet the thing that's been keeping me awake isn't the virus. I've been losing sleep over an old couch I once crossed paths with. It's been 8 years. I want to believe that I've put the past behind me, but being locked in a house for a couple of weeks has made it impossible to not dwell on the past. The memory of the couch started off as a fleeting thought over my morning coffee, but as days have turned into weeks, that memory's grown into a distinct vision of madness. What I saw during those 3 drunken nights in December of 2012 has become an unavoidable part of reality. I can't rest until I process it. So, since we have a nice little internet campfire going here, I figured I'd tell you guys a story. Hopefully it'll let me put this whole part of my past to rest, and maybe it'll take your mind off of what's happening outside. So kick back and let me tell you a tale of love and loss, of broken teenage hearts, of surviving in a crumbling world. Let me tell you a story about the couch that tried to seduce me. I was 19, hungover, heartbroken. I was also stuck in a foreign country. Well, to call Estonia a foreign country would be a bit of a long shot. I'd lived there for a good 5 years of my life. It was in Estonia that I lived out most of my teenage years. This was where I'd smoked my first cigarette, had my first drink, fell in love for the first time. I was dragged in when I was 13 by my parents. They had business in Tallinn, and, well, wherever they went, I went. At 18, when my parents' contracts ran out, I was forced back home. Their business in Estonia was done. Mine was not. By 19, I was back. As soon as I got off the plane, I turned my phone on, checked my messages. She didn't write to me. My soul, positioned somewhere slightly above my abdomen, twitched in discomfort. It was a familiar twitch. I had felt it in the bus to the airport. I had felt it in the security check. I'd felt it when I boarded the flight to Tallinn, and as soon as I got off the plane, the twitch was back with a vengeance. The discomfort I was feeling in my chest was a realization. It was the realization that I had emptied out most of my already slim bank account on a one-way ticket halfway across the continent to see my old high school sweetheart who wasn't interested in seeing me. It was the realization that as much as I consciously knew the trip was a bad idea, I couldn't resist going. I dragged my feet towards the arrivals hall. When it became obvious that Saleh was dodging my messages, I panicked. There was no place for me to crash. I had no money for a flight. Hell, I had no money for food. Oh, as I boarded the plane to Estonia, I sent off a panicked text message to my old bandmate. Made horrible mistake, landing in Tallinn, 3 hours. Can I crash at yours? Within 2 minutes, there was a reply.
Okay. We'll come with Maria. See you soon.
Carl wasn't very chatty, but he was always there when needed. The two of them were waiting for me as soon as I walked out into the arrival hall. They barely changed. Carl was still a giant of a man. His long hair had gotten longer, and the beard he'd rocked since 17 had gotten thicker. The guy looked like Jesus on steroids, if Jesus was really into heavy metal and wore glasses. Next to Carl stood Maria. She wore a garish yellow coat. The pink streak in her hair she'd been so proud of back in middle school was pinker than ever.
"James, you're back!"
Maria yelled in her high-pitched faux English accent, before nearly tackling me to the ground.
"It's been too long, honey, too long."
She hadn't changed a bit since I left the country. Maria was still a pint-sized bolt of energy. The two of them made for an odd couple.
Welcome back, friend,
Carl said after Mario was done squeezing me. He wasn't one for physical contact. Carl settled on a simple pat on the shoulder that challenged my entire skeletal structure. The three of us made our way outside to catch a bus to the center. Even after living in Estonia for 5 years, I still wasn't used to the winters. As soon as we walked out into the sub-zero temperature, I felt decidedly like a foreigner. We caught up on the small things while we waited for the bus. Carl and Maria had officially moved in together. The band that Carl and me started up in high school had broken up. Maria was in a process of getting a bachelor's degree of psychology, and Carl was really into some cryptocurrency stuff that went completely over my head. I couldn't get much out of me. The cold was taking a real toll on my system. Whenever I opened my mouth to talk about my miserable little life, I simply ended up chattering my teeth. As soon as we got on the bus, I threw myself at the nearest heating vent.
So, James,
Maria said as soon as we got on the bus.
you still talk to Sale?
When I turned away from the heater to face her, she froze.
I mean, we don't have to talk about it. Forget I asked.
Do I look that bad? While Maria searched for a diplomatic answer, Carl stepped in with his special brand of honesty.
You look very tired and unhappy.
Well, I'm happy to see you guys, and I'm excited to be here, but yeah. I decided to get the conversation out of the way. We tried 2 months of long distance, but Skype only gets you so far. Broke up in late July. After we split, we agreed not to talk for a couple months, to give each other some time to clear the system and all that. Keeping radio silence was hard at first, but after a couple weeks, I started to get used to it. I was learning to live without her. Things were starting to straighten up. I even took a stab at dating, but when the holidays rolled around, the loneliness came back. On Christmas, I figured I'd throw her a holiday message. She wrote back. We started chatting on a daily basis again. The bus bounced through my old neighborhood. Memories of my drunken youth jumped at me from every corner. Most of those memories involved her, of course. Last night, we got pretty drunk, I continued. Things got flirty. We started talking about what we could do if we weren't half a continent away from each other. She mentioned her parents were out of town until the end of January on some sort of anniversary trip. I offered to fly in. She told me I should, and now I'm here.
She changed her mind?
Carl asked. She didn't think I was serious about flying over. Didn't exactly check with her before I bought the ticket, and she flipped out when I got it, told me to get a refund, and then hung up on me when I insisted on meeting up. She hasn't answered any of my messages since. Part of me felt good to get the story out of my system, but saying it out loud just added to the absurdity. I could have not bought the ticket. I could have gotten a refund. I could have not got it on the plane. Everything could have been avoided. The 19-year-old me leaped at the opportunity for a grand romantic gesture, like a hungry animal.
Very strange,
Carl finally said after considering my story. He shot a look over to Maria as if she was the ambassador to all womankind.
Very strange, right?
Maria shrugged. Maria's house was the crown jewel of my high school social life. It was a 3-apartment unit that was built at some point before the World Wars. This place was old. As you would walk around the little apartment, it would creak. But it made for a perfect party place. Maria had inherited the apartment from her grandma at 16. The Estonians saw child rearing as a fairly independent process. If she couldn't survive on her own at 16, she probably wouldn't make it at 30. A bit of responsibility would prepare her for the frigid world outside. Maria used her newly found independence to throw the biggest house parties that the neighborhood had ever seen. Maria's place was perfect for booze-filled gatherings. It was spacious enough to hold any drinking game we could dream up. There was a nice terrace for smoking, and the neighbors were either deaf, completely apathetic about teenage drinking, or both. As soon as the front door opened, I was assaulted by memories, visions of drunken nights on the floor of the living room, of hungover mornings of the kitchen. The old apartment breathed with the past. For a split second, a wave of gratitude for a youth well spent washed over me. But then I remembered that each of those fond memories had an element I wanted to block out. Most of the fun I had had in the apartment had been with Sale by my side. Maria and Carl still slept on an old mattress on the floor. The walls were still covered with cutouts of boy bands that Maria had stuck to the wall in her tweens. The only thing that changed about their bedroom was the addition of a massive computer rig on the table. There were strange ventilators and cooling tubes and blinking lights. The machine looked like something straight out of a sci-fi flick.
That's my mining rig,
Carl said proudly. I nodded as if I understand what he was talking about. Where are the rats? I asked, noticing the empty cage on Maria's wardrobe. Back in the day, Maria had 2 rats, Fritz and the Duchess. She'd keep them in the cage most of the time, but whenever the night reached a certain point of drunkenness, Maria would sneak over to her bedroom and come out with the 2 animals. If you saw Maria with 2 rats running up and down her body, you know the night was going to be a rager.
The Duchess died last week,
Maria said with a glint of sorrow.
Fritz wasn't taking it well. I think the little guy was depressed being in the cage all alone, so I'm letting him roam around the house for the time being. Hopefully a bit of freedom will cheer him up.
As if he'd heard his name, Fritz peeked out from behind the wardrobe. The albino rat raised his snout in the air, sniffed for a bit, and then lumbered off to the living room. The years had taken their toll on Fritz. He no longer moved with the youthful energy I was used to, but the one part of him that I remembered had not changed. Fritz still had balls that were disproportionately giant to his body. As he moved away from us, he dragged them behind him with a Sisyphean effort.
So, which hostel are you crashing at?
Maria asked. A lump manifested in my throat. I looked around the cramped apartment. Outside of the mattress, there was nowhere for me to sleep. I didn't have any money for a hostel.
I'm just kidding. You're crashing here. We owe you anyway.
Maria said with a good cheer. For what? I asked, relieved that I wasn't homeless.
Financing the booze and cigarettes back in the day. Might have ended up a nun if it weren't for you,
she said with a grin. It was true. Throughout high school, I had been the main financier of our misadventures. My parents had foreign money, and that money went pretty far by Estonian standards. More importantly, though, when everyone was 16, I looked 12. According to the law of teen streets, the late bloomer provides the dough for those who can buy stuff without ID.
You'll sleep on the couch. We just haven't had time to get it out of the garage. How about you and Carl drag it in while I make some tea?
Even though it was a bright winter day outside, the garage was in near darkness. The only thing that illuminated the cramped, musty room was a single ray of light shining in through a cracked skylight. The garage was covered in flimsy shelves that buckled beneath the weight of greasy machine parts. In the center of the garage lay a couch-shaped object covered with a large stained cloth. Carl grabbed a hold of the cloth and was about to pull it away, but a thought struck him.
James, if I tell you something, will you not tell Maria?
He asked, letting the cloth drop back down to the floor. He looked straight at me. His small eyes were probing me for trustworthiness. Well, depends on what it is, I said. Don't need help bearing a body, right?
No.
Carl's intensity broke into a smile.
It is nothing illegal, just a secret.
He strode towards one of the rickety shelves and plunged his hand deep into its depths. After a moment of rustling, he pulled out a small box. He opened it. Even though the garage was dark and even though the diamond was tiny, you could see a little glimmer. Carl's eyes shone twice as bright. Wow, man, I say, realizing how quickly the world was moving on. Congratulations! Maria and Carl would get married, and I would be at their wedding alone. As I stood in that garage, the thought that I would always be alone gushed dread through my veins. We used to joke about how Saleh and me would get hitched before the two of them did. Those jokes felt cruel now. Maria and Carl would get married, and one day Saleh would get married too. She'd get married to someone who wasn't me. I'm really happy for you.
I want to ask her father soon. He does not like me much, but I think I can show him that I can provide for his daughter. This Bitcoin thing, it will be big soon, James. In a couple of years, me and Maria will be rich.
Carl put the box back into its hiding place.
Promise not to tell her, yes?
Promise, I said with as much candor as I could muster. But my mind was elsewhere. My mind was floating disembodied in a bright church, watching over my would-be wife get married to someone else.
James.
Carl's paw on my shoulder brought me back into reality.
You will be okay. I know you're worried about Saleh, but you still have us. We will drink this away.
He smiled. I tried to smile back.
Let's get this couch, shall we?
He pulled away at the cloth that covered the couch, and enough dust flew off into the air to send us both into a coughing fit. The room danced with dirty particles, yet from behind the veil of powder I could see it. I could see the couch. The thing was ancient, a couch straight out of the early days of the Soviet Union. Its flowering upholstery was covered in stains that had just screamed history. It was as if the piece of furniture had been used for barricades in the defense of Stalingrad and lived to talk about it. Filth filled its rumpled cloth, stood on firm wooden legs that seemed to have survived multiple generations of being clawed at. It was as if the thing was simply biding its time until its true masters came back to retrieve it. The couch was old, But somehow in that dark garage, in that gust of earthly smoke, there was something alluring about it. It looked ratty, but comfortable, even inviting. For a split second, I was sure that the couch had winked at me with its cushioning. Then the dust settled, and it was just a piece of furniture. Carl grabbed one side of the couch, I grabbed the other, and we started to haul the thing towards the living room. We'd left the garage, but there was still tension in the air. I was still thinking about Saleh getting married to someone who wasn't me, and it was still as if Carl and me were meant to have a serious discussion neither of us were comfortable with. I lost my virginity on this couch, I shared, hoping to relax the situation. Carl grinned, accepting the levity.
Gross.
We dragged the couch to the living room and then joined Maria in the kitchen. Back in the day, her kitchen table was the go-to place to gather before drinking and after drinking. We'd sit around and shoot the shit and wait for someone to drop off the booze for the evening or the hungover pizza for the morning. Yet as we sat there trying to make small talk, one of the chairs was empty and it made all the difference. I couldn't focus on anything that was being said all around me. All I could think about was how Saleh used to sit next to me. All I could think about were her long legs on my lap, her long fiery hair, her laughter.
How about we sweeten the evening with a bit of moonshine?
Maria asked, as she fished a clear bottle out of the kitchen counter.
Carl and me are going to lunch with my parents tomorrow, though, so no hangovers.
Carl cheered on the promise of alcohol, but not even a drink could lift my spirits. My eyes shifted from Saleh's empty seat to the couch. All I wanted to do was lie down and fall asleep for 1,000 years. Guys, I appreciate the hospitality, but I'm really tired. How about we drink tomorrow? I said. Carl and Maria looked concerned. This was the first time they'd ever seen me refuse booze.
Are you sure you're okay, honey? We can talk if you want to,
Maria suggested. I insisted I was fine. I just needed to get some rest. That didn't convince her, but she yielded.
Well, we'll be in my room if you need us.
Her and Carl shuffled off to the bedroom, and I laid down on the couch. From the other room, I could hear them talk. Maria talked in concerned whispers, while Carl spoke at full volume. It didn't make much of a difference. Even after 5 years of being in the country, I still couldn't understand Estonian. I could hear my name being mentioned, though, and they were concerned about the emotional wreck that was crashing on their couch. I dragged my friends into my mess. It was all so humiliating. I was far from home, broke and broken. I wanted to die.
Easy there, Tiger. Don't think like that.
A faint voice emerged from the back of my head.
Things might not seem great now, but look on the bright side. At least you're on a comfortable couch.
The voice was right. The couch was indeed comfortable.
All you need is a bit of distraction to forget about your broken heart. Some booze, some dough, maybe a bit of love, and you'll be good as new.
It was as if the suave voice turned a switch in my mind. Suddenly the tightness in my chest eased. A burst of joy started to bubble in my abdomen. My fingers started to trace the sides of the upholstery. The voice giggled.
That's the spirit, Tiger. Just relax. You're fine as long as you're here with me.
The universe felt lighter. My feelings of dread faded away and were replaced with an electric anticipation. I needed a drink to celebrate. I opened the door to Maria's bedroom. She was lounging on the mattress reading a psych textbook. Carl was watching bar graphs on the computer. Hey, guys, I peeked in. I feel a bit better now. How about those drinks? They both grinned. We drank. In the moment, I didn't give much thought to the voice in my head. My internal monologue was turned up a notch since the breakup anyway. I was used to hearing thoughts that I consciously didn't want to consider, and the silky voice that was telling me things would be okay was a welcome distraction. I sunk into the couch, and I let the night carry me away.
See, Tiger? Isn't it nice to be here? Isn't life just swell on this little old couch?
It would say. I nodded along. We drank more. All thoughts of avoiding hangovers were let go. The liquor poured freely. At some point, Marya emerged from a room with Fritz on her shoulder. We celebrated the tradition of our youth, but the rat was sluggish, far too old to crawl around on her body, and after a couple of minutes, Marya gave up on playing with the rat. She put him on the ground. Fritz simply walked around the room, dragging his testicles behind him like a ball and chain. We drank more. Carl lumbered up to his feet and went to fetch his guitar. Marya was out having a cigarette. I was far too comfortable on the couch. Having a moment to myself, I watched the rat. Fritz had spent the last couple of minutes roaming the living room and sniffing at my backpack, yet suddenly something caught his attention. He sniffed at the air, his whiskers bouncing in curiosity, then he looked towards the couch. The old rat sprung to his hind legs and turned towards me. It was as if his beady eyes were locked to the piece of furniture.
Oh, Tiger, don't think about the stupid rat. Look, here comes Carl. Let's stop thinking about stupid things and listen to him play.
Oh, and how he could play. To say that Carl lacked warmth would be an understatement. Communicating with the guy often felt like having a conversation with a pile of awkwardly stacked encyclopedias, but as soon as he would bring out the guitar, he would ooze personality. Somehow, with those hulking fingers of his, Carl had managed to make the strings sing the gentlest of tones. Marya and me sang along out of key as the night went on.
Just like the good old days, Tiger. You're here, and you're happy. Focus on the positives. Focus on the present.
The voice told me. I followed the advice. Until I couldn't. It was as if the spell had been broken. As soon as I heard those opening chords, as soon as I realized what Carl was playing, my stomach sank. It was that Rolling Stones song. Saleh and me had danced to it once upon a time. Memories of our first night together came rushing into my mind. The Saleh-shaped hole in my heart throbbed with pain. I got up to splash some water on my face. Carl shifted his performance into a serenade for Marya. The tiles in the bathroom were freezing, but I was willing to withstand the pain if it meant I could get further away from the song. I stood there willing to wait it out, but the memories just kept on floating back. I was standing in the same bathroom I stood in the night that I met Saleh. I could see traces of a 16-year-old in my face. The music kept on building. Saleh's lily perfume filled my nostrils. I could remember the fullness of her lips before our first kiss. The images were cascading on top of each other, ripping away at my sanity, ready to plunge me into a panic attack, but then they stopped. The music stopped. I peeked out the door. Carl had chucked his guitar over to the side. His serenade had given way to a heavy make-out session. Him and Marya were all over each other. "Guys, I'm going out for a cigarette," I announced. The two of them looked up at me, dazed and drunk. "Take the keys, honey. I think we're going to bed." I hoped that the dial tone would block out Marya's moans, but it didn't. Not only did I have to listen to a loving couple have sex, I also had to listen to the world's quietest dial tone as I was reminded that Saleh did not want to talk to me. I stood out there in the freezing cold, smoking one cigarette after another. It was just me, the starless sky, and Marya's moans. Carl lasted for a quarter of a pack before their bedroom quieted down, and I tried calling Saleh one more time, and then I went back inside. By the time I stumbled to the couch, I could already hear snoring coming from the bedroom, but there was another sound in the apartment. Something much quieter, something I almost didn't notice. Scratching. Luckily, I managed to prop myself up against the couch before I sat on him. As I tried to regain my balance, I realized just how drunk I was. Fritz was on the couch, furiously scratching into its upholstery. He looked up at the drunken figure hovering over him for a split second and then went back to work. Those little claws scratched with the ferocity of a pup. It was as if Fritz was 2 years younger. I picked him up by his scruff and tried taking him off the couch, and when I lifted him off the ground, the rat seemed confused for just a split second before Fritz screamed the world's tiniest scream and then bit me in the finger. He dropped to the ground and ran beneath a nearby wardrobe. He hid beneath it and watched me. I was too drunk and tired to care. I laid down on the couch and exhaled.
Welcome back, Tiger. You look tired. Let me keep you company. Yes, life is hard, but if you really appreciate the moment, it can be pretty enjoyable. Lie down here. Let me keep you, hold you. Let's get to know each other better.
I could smell floral perfume. I closed my eyes and drifted off to a deep sleep.
They're really going at it, aren't they? Saleh said. Looking towards the bedroom, Carl and Mario were rustling around in there, too drunk to contain the volume of their passion. The two of us sat around and tried to do anything but listen. Saleh and me started off as strangers that night, but we ended up being the last people standing. It was the biggest party of the summer, and we were the only lucid survivors. We were holding hands. Yeah, I replied. She squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. We started off the night rambling about everything and anything under the sun, but now conversation had run out. All we had was nervous eye contact and hand squeezing. Both of us were too scared to take the next step. I'm very drunk, I said, giving myself plausible deniability. Me too, she said. Her hazel eyes held onto mine. Come on, you're the guy. Make the first move. Want to dance? I suddenly blurted out. Saleh cocked her head to the side. Do you have music? She squeezed my hand again. Hard. A look of mischief spread across her face. Maria howled in the other room. Yeah, definitely. I fished out my Sony Ericsson and searched through the 14-song library for something that wasn't ska music. I found that one Rolling Stones song. We got off the couch and wrapped our arms around each other. The music came out of the flip phone with the orchestral quality of a potato, and the sounds from the bedroom were considerably louder, but we didn't care. We just wanted an excuse to hold each other. It wasn't really dancing. We were just hugging each other while stepping from side to side. The anticipation was electric. She whispered something in my ear. I pretended not to hear and moved closer to her. Our lips brushed against each other. We kissed. It wasn't the booze, it wasn't the dope, it wasn't the hormones. There was something else in my blood in that moment. A surge of electricity, so powerful that to taste it just for a single second made life worth living. The universe focused all of its attention, all of its beauty, and washed it over our moment. We laid down on the couch. Scratching. Suddenly the soft sounds of her breath were overpowered by scratching. I pulled back. Saleh looked at me with those heart-melting eyes. What's wrong? The scratching grew louder, more furious. Claws. I could hear claws. She said something else, but I couldn't hear her by then. That the scratching had grown deafening. Saleh looked up in horror. Fabric ripped. I woke up. Fritz was right by my head, his long tail resting inches from my face. I watched him in a daze. He was furiously digging into the upholstery. There was a sizable hole there. The rat must have worked at it for the whole night. His little body dug with desperate energy, trying to make the opening as big as possible. Yet, after a couple of seconds, he stopped. Fritz shoved his head into the hole and his whole body went limp. His furry frame rose and fell with effort as Fritz breathed in as much of the couch as he could. I grabbed him by the nape and took him out of the couch. The creature was nothing like the animal I'd held the night before. Fritz's head had lost most of its fur. All that was left was tufts of gray that splashed over his irritated skin. He snapped at me, or at least tried to. His jaw was heavy, his eyes barely stayed open. I placed him on the floor. As soon as he was on his own feet, he fell over. After a couple lethargic seconds, he stumbled to his paws and crawled beneath the wardrobe. Carl walked out of the bedroom. He stopped when he noticed I was awake. "James, which tie seems more formal?" Carl looked like a madman. He was wearing Superman underwear and a fancy white dress shirt that barely fit around his paunch. In each hand he held a black tie. I was too disoriented to tell the difference. I don't know, Carl. They both look pretty similar to me, I said. Carl looked down at the ties. He raised each one of them to his face for closer examination. Finally, after some thought, he nodded. "I think you are right, James. These ties do look identical." He retreated back to the bedroom and emerged with only one tie that he started putting on. "Oh, also good morning, friend," Carl added as an afterthought. "Good morning, Carl," I replied. "James, don't enable him! He's just being nervous about meeting my parents," Maria yelled from the kitchen. "Nothing to be scared of, Carl. You know my parents are cool." "Your parents are most definitely not cool. Your father is a very scary man, and your mother is a very angry woman," Carl protested. He looked over at me. "Right, James?" Maria peeked out of the kitchen. I had only seen Maria's father once. It was during Maria's high school graduation. She'd managed to sneak me in so I could attend the after party. I remembered seeing him across the hall, watching his daughter get her diploma with that emotionless scowl that fathers raised behind the Iron Curtain had perfected. Her dad bore a striking resemblance to Carl. He was a big dude, but where Carl carried a lumberjack beard, Maria's father had a simple mustache. Maria's father also had scars. Even at a distance, you could see them. A face covered in splotches of red as if he'd experienced some great horror at a young age. "Your mother is a pretty angry woman, Maria," I said. Maria scoffed. "If you piss her off, she is. Point is, Carl shouldn't be scared. My parents like him." "No, they don't," Carl protested. Maria rolled her eyes. "You want some coffee, James?" she yelled from the kitchen. "Sure," I said. I tried sitting up, hoping to lose a bit of my drowsiness, but something was wrong. I fished my left hand from under the couch. Somehow, as I slept, I clawed my index finger into the stuffing of the couch. It took effort to take it out. It was as if the upholstery had wrapped itself around my finger. Maria brought me my coffee and said something about how they were going to a nearby restaurant for the lunch, but her words fell on deaf ears. I was completely focused on my pointer. The skin around it was an unhealthy red. It was cold to the touch. All the feeling in the finger was gone. I could move it, but the movements were sluggish. It was as if the finger was in a deep sleep. As Maria and Carl got ready, I tried to reassess how damaged the finger was. I didn't snap out of the mystery until I heard the front door slam shut. I wasn't alone, though.
Quit worrying about your finger, Tiger. You just slept funny. Think about more pleasant things.
The voice in my head slithered back.
Remember how soft Saleh's skin was? How sweet her perfume smelled as you two made love.
I laid back down and ran my hand across the couch. For something so old, it was so remarkably smooth. Fritz was suddenly back by my head. He ran towards the hole that he had worked on prior and started clawing at it again. He tore the threading frantically. He wanted to be back inside of the couch. He needed to be back inside of the couch. I reached out to pick him up, but reconsidered.
Leave him be, Tiger. He's just enjoying himself.
My hand fell back to the firm cushioning at the couch.
That's a good boy,
The voice said.
Now where were we? Ah, yes. Saleh. What a girl, huh? Remember how good it felt to wake up next to her?
I did. I remember. It was, after all, on that very same couch that I woke up next to Saleh for the first time. It was the day after the party. When I woke up, I nearly jumped out of my skin. It took me a second to realize where I was. That there was a beautiful woman on my arm, that I had made love to an alluring stranger the night before. Yet when the thought set in, a wave of bliss washed over me. A gentle morning light was coming in through the blinds, the birds outside chirped peacefully, and Saleh snored.
Her half-open mouth, those tiny sounds, so vulnerable, so romantic.
Then the door opened.
Oh, Tiger, you don't have to think about that part.
Then the door opened, and Maria's mother came in. The woman did not like me to begin with. The couple of times that we had met, she regarded me with absolute disdain. Maria even admitted it. Her mother didn't want her daughter hanging around with strange foreigners. As soon as Maria's mom saw us, she started screaming.
Oh, come on, Tiger, you don't have to think about arguments right now. Think about the good times.
Her yelling woke everybody up. As me and Saleh were frantically putting on our clothes, the bedroom door flew open and Maria started yelling at her mom. I didn't understand a word of it, but Maria's mom seemed to have it really out for me. She kept on pointing. She kept on screaming and pointing at me, or was she pointing to the couch?
Oh, come on, Tiger. There's other memories to go back to. Remember the first time that you and Saleh...
We ran out as soon as we had enough clothes to be decent. Saleh and me left the argument behind. Maria's mom didn't chase us, but we ran for a couple blocks anyway. We moved through the morning streets, giggling. After Saleh nearly got hit by a tram, we finally stopped. For a second, we stood there, slightly hungover and out of breath. We kissed. She seemed really angry. What was she saying? I asked. "This is not the whorehouse. My daughter will be no madame," Saleh yelled, mimicking Maria's mother's voice. We laughed. But then Saleh frowned. To be honest, though, she seemed a bit more angry about that couch being in the room. She kept on pointing at it and asking where they'd gotten it, saying that it was meant to be burned years ago.
Stop thinking about this, Tiger.
The voice thundered through my skull.
If you ever want to be happy again, stop thinking about it.
The voice was no longer flirty. Darkness loomed with it. My mind cleared in fear. I looked to the side. Fritz had made progress with the hole. He was halfway inside and still digging. His tail and hind legs stuck out of the hole. His inflamed testicles pressed against the side of the couch. With a couple more frantic movements, he squeezed himself inside. The rat was gone.
Wondering what he's doing, Tiger?
The couch asked gingerly.
He's floating in ecstasy. Oh, yes. He's experiencing pleasure you couldn't even begin to comprehend. Unless...
Fabric groaned as the hole that Fritz had dug expanded. I could see the stuffing. It heaved up and down as if the couch was breathing. The hole was big enough to fit my hand.
Come on, Tiger. You know you want to try.
I extended my hand. There was something from the couch that called to me. Something stronger than me. Beads of perspiration streamed down my forehead. My clothes were soaked with sweat. As my fingers approached the gaping hole, I could feel a glint of electricity in the air. The universe turned its eyes on me and beckoned me towards the maw. I snapped out of it. My phone was ringing. It was Maria.
"James, goddammit, why don't you pick up your phone? I've been calling you for like 5 minutes.
She talked in an angry whisper.
Look, my parents decided that they want to come over to the apartment. My mum would flip if she knew you were staying with us. I need you out of the house, right now."
I jumped to my feet. The last person I wanted to see right now was Maria's mom. Okay, I'll be out in 5.
"Not good enough, James. We're almost there. Just get out, please, James. The lunch went really well. Please don't let her turn today into an argument."
Maria pleaded. I quickly put on my shoes and dashed towards the door. I didn't realize I forgot my coat until I was outside. The cold wind blew through my sweaty t-shirt.
Are you outside?
Maria whispered. Yeah, right at the door.
Okay, get out right now. We're almost there. I'll call you when the coast is clear. Sorry. Love ya.
Click. As I reached the end of the block, I could see the four of them walking towards the apartment. Carl and Maria's dad were engaged in a passionate conversation. Maria and her mom followed them, quietly smoking. I sped out of sight. I was freezing. A wet t-shirt in the Estonian winter felt like a death sentence. In my attempt to find a semblance of warmth, I went over to the bus station and got onto the first bus that stopped. I nestled up next to the heaters and immediately felt better. The plan was to warm up, maybe dry off, and then go find a mall to kill time in. That plan fell apart very quickly. The bus drove for a bit before I realized where it was going. For a second, I considered getting off, but it was too cold for me to be roaming the streets, or at least that's what I told myself. I took out my iPod and scrolled over to the Rolling Stones. The bus rode out to Saleh's neighborhood. I returned back to Maria's apartment way after sundown. The day was a blur. I remembered running out of Maria's apartment. I remembered getting on the bus and riding over to Saleh's place. I remembered what happened at Saleh's, but everything else was covered in a thick mental fog. The vodka helped with that. I'd spent my last remaining cash on a bottle of good old 79% memory wipe. It helped me cope. It also made the Estonian winter more bearable. James, honey, where were you? Maria was outside having a cigarette when I stumbled to the house. I've been calling you all day. Are you okay? There was a hint of a drunken slur to her voice. The phone's out of battery. I mumbled as I walked up. Are you okay? She repeated her question. I shrugged. I think I need a hug. Oh, darling, come here, Maria said as she wrapped her arms around me. She was wearing one of Carl's huge jackets. It wasn't until I was embraced in its warmth that I realized how cold I was. Want to talk about it? No. I didn't. All I wanted was just to be blindly told everything was going to be okay. I wanted assurances that I wouldn't feel like this forever. I needed to know that I would get over Saleh, yet Maria just sighed. I know it's hard, James. When you're ready to talk about it, I'm here for you. She sighed again. I could smell the booze on her breath. Thank you for leaving the house when you did. Things didn't go very well. She let go. I was back in the cold. What's wrong? I asked. Maria took a long drag of her cigarette. Her voice grew heavy. My dad was really interested in Carl's Bitcoin stuff, and he wanted to see his computer. Me and my mom were finishing off our cigarette outside, and Maria's eyes drifted toward the night sky and fluttered. She was trying not to cry. Maria, what's wrong? I asked. She cleared her throat and composed herself. My mom found out about the couch, and she got really pissed. She thought I burned it after that one house party. I just didn't want to throw away a perfectly good couch, but yeah, we have to burn it. Burn the couch? Why? I gasped. There's some ugly history behind it. Her voice grew faint. I don't really want to talk about it. It felt like the final bit of stability in my life had crumbled away. I had to drunkenly hold myself up against a lawn chair. When? Maria shrugged. Now is as good a time as any, I guess. We can just drag it out into the backyard, grab some lighter fluid, and torch it. I don't think anyone's going to mind. She was wrong. I would mind. My fists tightened. An inarticulate rage boiled in my blood. I wanted to hit her so bad, but instead I begged. One more night? I said. Just one more night with the couch. We can burn it tomorrow. It's New Year's, right? What a way to end off the year. We could have a little bonfire in the evening. James, Maria sighed. Honey, you can stay here, at least for a couple of days. We'll move some pillows around and you can sleep on the floor. We'll hang out tomorrow and it's going to be great. But my mom was really insistent on the couch. I promised her I would. Please don't get rid of the couch. I begged. Just one more night. Just one more night on the couch where I can think back to my memories of Saleh. I'm desperate, Maria. While your parents were visiting, I went over to Saleh's place. I got into her apartment block. I knocked on the door. I knew she was there, Maria. I could hear her walking up after I knocked. When she looked through the peephole, she completely ignored me. She just stood there, like I didn't exist. I called Maria. I called her phone. I could hear it ringing in the other room. I called until my goddamn battery ran out, but she never picked up. I traveled halfway across the continent on my last dime, and she wants nothing to do with me, Maria. The love of my life won't even answer her phone. All I have left is that couch. All I have left are those memories of that couch. Please, Maria. One more night on the couch. The words came out with a chest-tightening force. Each sentence made me grow weaker until I was barely able to talk. My face was streaked in tears. My nose was running all over my face. I looked like a complete mess. Maria wrapped her arms around me just as tight as she had in the airport. Okay, James. One more night, Maria said. I'm sorry you're going through this. I wish we could help. We stayed in the hug for what felt like an eternity. I wanted to let go, to pull back and be cool about everything, but I couldn't. The warmth under that jacket. Maria's arms around me, it all just felt safer than the world outside. We both need some sleep, Maria finally whispered. Carl barely noticed us when we walked into the apartment. He was sitting on the couch, stuck in a deep thought. When I saw him, an unexplainable pang of jealousy ran through my body. Me and that couch had something special going on. I cleared my throat. Carl jumped up in surprise. James, you're back. Where were you? We were worried about you, Carl said. I went to Saleh's. Oh. He dropped his eyes away from me, not knowing what to say. He looked over at Maria. You told James about what happened with your dad? Something happened with your dad? I asked. Maria stared daggers back at Carl. She spoke slowly, with a hidden force beneath her words. I have told James that my mother was very angry about the couch. We have decided that he will sleep on the couch for one more night, and then we will burn it tomorrow. Does that sound okay? Carl furrowed his brow. Yes, he finally said. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, leaning forward, as if he was about to say something else, and Maria cut him off. We should all get some sleep. Yeah, I said, sprawling out onto the couch.
Welcome back, Tiger.
They whispered to me.
Did someone have a rough day?
The voice soothed the pain in my chest. The world started to become more manageable. Carl and Maria went off to bed without saying much. There was something up, something that they were in disagreement about, but it was none of my business. The couch kept me company.
It's all going to be okay. You'll see.
The couch whispered to me in its silky voice.
You'll get over her. You'll find someone better than Saleh. And in a couple of months, you won't even remember her. You'll forget all about the relationship altogether. But you know who'll remember? She'll remember, Tiger. Oh yes. Saleh will be thinking about what an idiot she was to let you go.
The light in the bedroom was off, but I could hear Maria walking around and calling out for Fritz. She peeked her head into the living room and asked me if I saw him. I told her I didn't. She gave up and went to sleep.
Don't think about the rat.
The hole that Fritz made in the upholstery was gone. There wasn't even a sign of scratches. The whole couch, in fact, looked to be in better shape. The stains had completely disappeared from the couch. Loose threads were nowhere to be seen. The floral print had taken on a colorful shine.
Stop it!
The voice hit my head like a blunt object. A fog covered my thoughts. Everything felt so impossibly distant, but beneath that fog was a gentle tone of sweetness.
Come on, Tiger. Let's just enjoy this night together, huh? Lay here with me, and let's just bathe in each other's company.
The couch gently shuddered like a tantric massage chair. I heard the groaning of fabric. The place where Fritz had been digging spread apart to reveal a hole. Beyond the upholstery was stuffing. It pulsed with fleshy energy. The couch trembled with anticipation.
Touch me, Tiger. You know you want to.
I reached out as electricity flowed through my body. The universe turned all of its spotlights on me. The mind fog thickened into a blanket of ecstasy and wrapped me up. All other thoughts disappeared. My soul danced to the chaotic tune of life. I was trapped in a wave of orgasmic rapture.
Doesn't that feel so good, Tiger? Isn't this just exhilarating? Well, don't you worry. We can do this every night. Don't listen to anyone else. Nothing will get between us. It's you and me, Tiger. It's you and me. And no one is going to stop us. We'll make sure of that.
For a split second, it felt as if my finger brushed against something rough. I pinched at the object. It felt like a tail. Yet then, as if the gentle stuffing of the couch were a throat, the tail got swallowed deeper into its innards.
I love you,
the couch whispered. The room smelt like floral perfume. I could hear a dog barking outside. I was covered in sweat. I love you too, I whispered back. I drifted off to a deep sleep.
As I walked through the IKEA showroom, I felt distressed. I wanted to sit down. I needed to sit down. But all of the couches around me looked like they would cause me severe back pain. They were lit up with fancy lights and smelled faintly of disinfectant. The whole showroom felt like the world's fanciest hospital. I desperately searched among the rows for something that would make me comfortable, but my search seemed hopeless. I walked around aimlessly until, as if by divine intervention, I noticed a maintenance room in the corner of the showroom. As I opened the door, a cloud of smoke escaped the abyss that hid beyond. The darkness before me beckoned.
Come here, Tiger,
it whispered. I walked into the hallway. The door behind me closed. As I journeyed through the corridor, the smoke grew more intense, but so did my certainty that I would find what I was looking for. At first, it was only my footsteps that echoed through the darkness, but as I walked on, I could hear a far-off radio playing. A familiar song by the Stones grew louder as I approached a room at the end of the hall, yet the music was soon joined by sobs. Someone was crying. A fluorescent light bulb crackled in and out of life, yet it was strong enough to illuminate the small room. A dark-haired man in a worker's uniform sat by the edge of a familiar couch as he finished off stitching the last bits of flowery upholstery. He wept as he pulled out the thread and needle. His face was caked in grime, but the tears created 2 clear lines down his cheeks. When he saw me, he wiped away his tears and got up. The man composed himself, lit a cigarette, and walked over to me. He gave the couch one last look, but it wasn't a look of sorrow, it was a look of pride. The man looked back at the couch as if he had just walked his daughter down the aisle. Then he motioned towards it.
Come here, tiger. I've been waiting for you.
The couch growled, with sex in its tone. I stepped towards the couch. The electricity in the air was back and stronger than before.
I can make your wildest dreams come true, tiger. I can make you believe in heaven. All you have to do is fuck me.
I reached out for the couch. All of my nerve endings tingled with anticipation. I was millimeters away from nirvana. The universe had its gaze set on me and was about to reveal all of its secrets, but then my hand started to shake. It was gentle at first, but soon the convulsion spread through my arm. Within moments, I was down on the floor, my body throwing itself from side to side uncontrollably. The light bulb grew bright with a deafening scream. The world was crumbling at its axis. Pop! The room was plunged into darkness. James! James! Wake up! Carl's shadow stood above me. It was early morning. The room was still dim with dawn. Carl held 2 cigarettes in his hands. We should go have a cigarette, friend. I was horribly dazed. His words didn't make a lick of sense. The only thing that seemed understandable was the voice in the back of my head.
Don't listen to him, tiger. He wants to take me away from you. Don't let him get between our love.
I stirred on the couch. My fingers were deep in the upholstery. I don't feel like smoking right now, Carl. Carl didn't move. James, we have to take the couch outside. It doesn't belong in this house anymore. You and me should have a cigarette. We need to talk.
He wants to hurt me, tiger. Don't let him hurt me. Do something. He has to be stopped.
I yawned and tried to look as sleepy as possible, but Carl's eyes stayed on me. Mind if I nap for like 15 more minutes? I asked. James, he started. His voice was cold. We need to take the couch outside. We need to talk. I waited for the voice in my head to tell me what to do, but it fell quiet. I was abandoned. Okay, fine. No better way to start a morning than a bit of furniture moving and a smoke. I lumbered off the couch, put on my pants, and reached for one end of the couch. What's wrong with your hand? Carl asked. I looked down. My fingers were covered in a thick layer of red, as if I'd spent the whole night eating Cheetos. They were also bloated. My nails looked comically small, nestled in between thick puffs of red flesh. I waited for the couch to tell me what to do, but still it kept quiet. I don't know. Spent a good amount of time outside without gloves, I finally said. Carl looked over at my other hand, my perfectly normal hand that didn't spend the night inside of the couch, but he didn't say anything. We carried the couch outside in silence. It was oddly warm outside. There were still small piles of snow spread through the yard, but the neighborhood looked more like a muddy war zone than a winter wonderland. The couch remained silent until we dropped it off in the middle of the backyard.
There's a knife in the kitchen, tiger.
It whispered. Carl lit up his cigarette and offered me the lighter. I forgot my coat. Give me a sec, I said. I walked back into the apartment to fetch it. I went past the kitchen. When I walked out of the apartment, Carl was standing far off from the couch. He didn't register me walking out. His attention was purely focused on the mysterious furniture. Something was going on behind those small eyes of his. My bloated hand was shoved deep into the coat of my pocket.
You know what to do, Tiger.
The voice whispered.
He wants to take me away from you, but you can stop him. Be my hero, Tiger. Be my hero, and I will bring you incomprehensible pleasure.
I walked towards Carl. I was shaking. "Want to sit?" I finally asked, dragging his attention away from the couch. Carl motioned towards the lawn chair. "You can sit if you want." He lit up a cigarette.
One clean cut, Tiger. He won't see it coming. One clean cut through his throat.
I didn't sit. Carl's eyes drifted back towards the couch.
There is something wrong with that couch, James,
he started.
I was nervous yesterday. Mari's parents have always been very critical of me. They think I'm strange. Whenever I meet them, they talk to me like I've escaped from a mental asylum, like there's something wrong with me. But yesterday was different, James. Yesterday they made an effort. Maria's mother complimented me on my tie, and her father was willing to look in my eyes while we talked. During lunch, he asked me about my financial plans. I told him about Bitcoin.
Carl smiled.
Maria's father became very excited. He heard about cryptocurrency from his coworkers, but he did not understand it. I explained it to him. He was so impressed. He asked to see how everything works. He invited himself over to our apartment. Things were going well. I saw him smile. I thought things would continue going well.
Carl paused. His eyes drifted back to the couch.
Things did not go well. When we arrived at the apartment, Maria and her mom stayed outside for a cigarette. I went inside with Maria's father to show him the computer rig. I wanted him to see in a couple of years I'd be able to provide for a family. I wanted to ask him if he would,
Carl's voice dropped to a whisper.
Let me marry his daughter.
He took another puff and shook his head.
But we didn't get past the living room. As soon as he saw the couch, he stopped. He stood there, frozen, looking at the furniture. I tried talking to him, but it was as if he didn't hear me. For almost a minute, he stared at the couch, and then he jumped on it, and he started...
Carl trailed off. He looked back at the couch. An expression of utter disbelief danced around his face, but he struck it down.
Carl looked square into my eyes. Maria's father jumped on the couch and started to hump it. Even through the numbness of my fingers, I could feel the pointed edge of the kitchen knife. Do it, Tiger. Do it for me. Don't let him tell you his lies. Kill the freak. One clean cut. The loud whore inside is still asleep. She'll be easier to get rid of. Do it, Tiger. Do it so we can be together forever.
I cleared my throat.
Humping?
I asked.
Humping,
Carl replied.
He humped the couch. With all his energy. I tried to get him to stop, but he wouldn't listen to a word I said. He just kept on pressing himself against the couch like it was some long-lost lover. I left when he started to take off his pants. I went outside to get Maria and her mom. I told them something was wrong with Maria's dad and that they needed to come inside right away. At first they didn't understand. They kept asking questions. Could they not finish their cigarettes? What was specifically wrong? Why was I so panicked? They were oblivious. But as soon as I mentioned the couch, James, as soon as I mentioned the couch, something sparked in Maria's mom's eyes. She ran inside the apartment, cigarette still in her hand, and dragged him out. Remember how angry she was when she caught you and Saleh the night after the party.
Remember how we would joke about how crazy she was about the couch? James, the anger I saw yesterday was nothing compared to that. Maria's mother was furious. She slapped and hit Maria's dad until he was out of the apartment. She threatened him with divorce. She kicked and punched the man and then locked the door so he couldn't come back. She said that Maria's dad was obsessed with the couch when they started dating, that the scars on his face are from rubbing against the cushioning. The only way that Maria's mom and her grandma managed to get her dad back to normal was by hiding the couch while he went out to do his military service. After he came back, he kept searching for it. He kept on demanding that the couch be returned, but over the years he gave up. That's why Maria's mom wanted us to burn the couch when she saw it. That's why she demands we burn it now. There's something wrong with that couch, James. I sat on it last night while you and Maria were talking outside. There's something horribly rotten about that couch. As I sat there, I could feel it probing into my brain, trying to grab onto something. It was as if the couch was trying to find pain that it could use, pain that it could feed off of. We have to burn it.
Slit his throat.
The voice boomed in my head.
Slit his throat and then slit her throat and then come to me.
I could feel my arm getting ready. I could already see the blood streaming through his beard. I kept on trying to remind myself that Carl is my friend, that I didn't want to hurt him, but every fiber of my being was being dragged towards murder. I took a step back. Can we burn it after New Year's? Are you okay? Carl's face suddenly turned concerned. You look pale, James. I took another step backwards.
A single slice, Tiger. He won't see it coming.
My legs turned to jelly. I leaned up against the wall. I wanted to take my hand off the knife. I desperately wanted to be as far away from the weapon as I could be, but my hands refused. Murder jumbled my mind. Images of death and pleasure and the couch filled my vision. I don't think I'm okay. Carl took a step forward. He planted his hand on my shoulder.
Just do it, you coward. Just do it. Don't let him get in the way of our love.
He sighed. Is this about Saleh? Yes. I find myself saying. The couch smells like her. I'm such a mess, Carl. I don't know how to get over this. I just want to be back. I just want to be back in high school again, and I want the four of us to be together again, and I want to drink every night. I realized I was crying again.
Coward,
the voice whispered. Carl looked at me, visibly feeling awkward. His brow furrowed as he tried to figure out what to say. We can still drink every night, he finally said, offering up a weak smile. I couldn't even manage a smile back. He frowned and thought for a bit more before he spoke again. James, life is sometimes bad and sometimes it is good. Things will not change. Saleh will not come back, but if you wait long enough, things will get better. You'll forget. You'll feel better. I'm not good with words, but I'm good with waiting. Me and Mario will wait with you until you are better. My hand slipped out of my pocket. It was empty. Thank you, Carl, I said.
you're a coward.
The voice reminded me. The pieces started to fall together. The voice. The rat. The dreams. Maria's dad. There was something wrong with that couch. It needed to go. Yet there was still a part of me that couldn't handle seeing it burn. I needed time to prepare. You're right about the couch. There's something off about it, but could we wait until after midnight to burn it? Carl studied me. Why? It's silly, I know, but I think getting rid of the place where me and Saleh had our first night would be a good start to the new year. Like a way to let things go. Carl considered the idea for a bit and then nodded. It felt like a burden was lifted. Maria joined us outside after a couple of minutes with coffee. The warmth of the cup felt soothing on my irritated skin. Being with the two of them felt soothing to my irritated soul. Suddenly things started to brighten. Saleh and me would never be back together. Hell, maybe I would never see her again. And the thought stung, but while I was in the company of Carl and Maria, it felt manageable. We set up plans for the rest of the day. By the looks of it, our last day of 2012 would be filled with walks through old places, falafel, booze. We sat down in the kitchen for some pre-drinking. I put the knife where it belonged when no one was looking. The time that it had spent in my pocket felt like a fever dream. Anything related to the couch felt like a distant memory. The whole morning the voice had been silent. It was as if it had just satiated itself with calling me a coward and decided to abandon me. I returned the favor. Even though it was right outside the window, I didn't look at the couch a single time the entire morning. It was dead to me. In fact, I started to doubt whether it was ever alive to begin with. Yet as we headed out to town, I couldn't help myself. I looked back at the couch. It stood defiantly in the middle of the backyard, snow and mud all around it. This was not the same dusty couch Carl and me had dragged out of the garage. It was comfy looking, clean, even sleek. As Carl and Maria walked on, I could see the upholstery rumple into a wink.
We're not done, Tiger.
A voice faintly whispered in my mind.
Not by a long shot.
I ignored it and went out with my friends. We traced through our high school drinking holes. Tallinn's nightlife was always shifting around. Waiters and bartenders from Australia would sit at home, save up their money, and run to the Baltics to buy a bar. The bar would be a financial trash fire, and in under a year they would go broke. Yet the money that the expats blew on their dreams burnt bright. The names and owners of the bars might have changed, but the memories that we made within those walls stayed. We went through the shisha bar, where I would always celebrate my birthdays. The karaoke place, where Carl blew all of our minds. The hole in the wall where our band had its first gig. We hopped from memory to memory until we ended up in the grand melting pot. Hell Hunt Park. By day, Hell Hunt was a pub with a park terrace. By night, Hell Hunt was a pub with an adjoining noise complaint. As soon as the terrace closed down, teens from every corner of the city would crowd the benches of the park and drink. Even though most of our drinking began at Maria's place, we would often stumble through here. Hell Hunt was the place where our social circle would stretch. They'll be closing it down soon, Carl said, looking at the mingling crowd of underage drunks. Neighbors are complaining about the noise. Screw those neighbors! Maria drunkenly yelled at the windows. She was out pacing both of us. It wasn't even 10 o'clock and she was already drunk enough to forget the whole night. If you don't like the noise, just come outside. Come and drink with us! Maria yelled her offer to the windows. No one paid attention to her. Yelling was a regular occurrence in Hell Hunt. Maria stumbled her way over to the bench where Carl and me were sitting and collapsed between us. You guys hear about Tinder? That night was the drunkest I had ever seen her. Tinder? I asked. It is an application for your phone where you choose strangers to have sex with, Carl said. Maria scoffed so hard she fell on my shoulder. It's a love app. It's where strangers like James here, find love. What an exciting time to be single. You're just given a list of people and you go beep boop. Next thing you know, you're married. Maria lifted her head. She looked in my eyes as an air of utter seriousness and rum drifted off her. "But I swear to God, James, if you get married before me, I'll slit your throat." She burst out into a stream of giggles, managing to spill her drink in the process. "Whoops! Looks like Mama needs more jet fuel." Maria staggered up to her feet and started falling down in the direction of the pub. Carl got up and managed to catch her before she fell over. "I will come with you. James, you want anything?" I still had half a plastic cup of vodka Sprite. The two lovebirds went into the pub and left me alone with the crowd. I started to think about that Tinder thing that Maria was talking about. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was a good time to be single. I was in the country with the highest models per capita. I was a foreigner. I haven't been in a serious relationship for 6 months. There was something about having 2 breakdowns in the past 2 days that flooded the obsession out of me. I started searching the crowd for someone I would have swiped right on. That's when I saw her. She was standing at the edge of a circle of people. Some dude with dreadlocks was telling some story, and she was listening. Her hazel eyes drifted around. They caught mine. For a split second, we held each other's gaze. Then Saleh broke into a sprint. I ran after her. The old town of Tallinn is a lot less beautiful when you sprint through it. You can't appreciate the medieval buildings when you're in a mad dash. The cobbled streets definitely don't help that either. I ran after Saleh as the city turned into a blur around me. My head spun as I ran past the buildings. Old school field trips, karaoke, drunken trips to McDonald's, all those thoughts rumbled about, yet above all of them there was one solitary thought that reigned supreme. I had to catch Saleh. She ran with comical intensity, bumping into drunken crowds as she tried to get away from me. It was as if an animal was chasing her. Seeing that panic in her face whenever she looked behind to see if I was gaining on her started to crack something in me. We ran out of the old town towards the 2 big malls. Crossing the road, Saleh nearly got hit by a tram. Something in me broke. I stopped. The absurdity of it all hit me at once. I was literally chasing her. She didn't want to talk to me. She wouldn't talk to me. For a couple minutes, I stood still, letting the celebrating crowds walk past me like I was a lamppost. I was wavering between rage and despair. I chose the latter and trudged my way back to Hellhunt. Carl and Maria were still sitting on the same bench. He was nursing another beer, whilst Maria was chugging on water, insisting that she was just getting hydrated to do more drinking later on. It wasn't rare to lose your friends at Hellhunt for 30 minutes. They didn't ask where I disappeared to. They could tell something was off, though. I tried to act cool, pretend that everything was fine, but it wasn't. I couldn't stay there. I just needed to go back to Maria's and just be alone. "What? You can't leave. It's New Year's Eve!" Maria groaned. She kept on touching my face as if that would put me in a more festive mood. "Do you want us to come home too? I'm sure we can see the fireworks from the backyard," Carl finally said. "I think Maria might benefit from lying down." Maria protested. She was basically sober, after all. "No, I think I need to be alone right now." Carl studied me for a bit, but finally nodded. "We will be back after the fireworks. There are some games on my computer if you get bored." I appreciated the sentiment, but I wasn't in a mood for video games. Carl gave me the keys, and I made my way back to Maria's place. I moved past the crowds, heading towards the center. I prayed I wouldn't bump into Saleh again. I rushed past the couch sitting in the backyard. I know couches don't have eyes, but I knew it was watching me. It was silently waiting for me to slip. There was a half-drunk bottle of moonshine on the living room floor from our pre-drinking. Just like any 19-year-old European boy, the prospect of booze to dull my sadness leapt out at me. I tried to wash out the sting of rejection with the alcohol, and for a while it helped. It dulled the pain. But the drunker I got, the more my eyes started to slide towards the window. The couch just sat out there in the backyard, mud all around it, awaiting execution.
I told you we weren't done.
It whispered.
Come outside, Tiger.
I took another pull of moonshine. I realized I needed a cigarette. The silence between the sounds of far-off fireworks was starting to grow shorter and shorter. Tallinn was barreling towards New Year's as I made my way out to confront the couch. It sat there in the darkness, occasionally being lit up in bright colors from the explosions in the sky. It was watching me.
Come here, Tiger.
It said. This was no longer the ratty couch I had seen in the garage. The upholstery was completely spotless. There was a strength that lured between those perfectly stitched flowers.
Come here and get comfortable, Tiger. Come here and sit down.
I made my way through the mud. One hand gripped around a bottle of moonshine, the other deep in my jacket pocket.
That's right, Tiger. Come to me. Let me help you feel alive.
My fingers were still bloated and numb, but I could feel the sharp edge of the knife in my jacket. All I had to do was get close enough to crack. I lifted my foot to see what I'd stepped on. At first it seemed like a pile of white toothpicks, but as soon as I saw the finely cleaned skull, I knew what I was looking at.
Oh, don't shed too many tears, Tiger.
It's just a rat
There's no pleasure.
without a price. What's one vermin life compared to the ecstasy you're about to experience? Come here, Tiger. Let me show you what all the fuss is about.
I pushed aside all the memories of Marya's pet. This wasn't the time for mourning. I could feel the couch reaching into my mind. I could feel it slowly taking control.
Is that a knife in your jacket? Or are you just happy to see me, Tiger?
I stabbed the couch. The booming of the fireworks was overpowered by the ripping of upholstery. I slashed away at the couch, madly. Tearing apart its perfectly stitched flowers, the knife made quick work of the cloth. With every jab, the fabric seemed weaker. Within seconds, the sleek couch was reduced to a mess of stuffing on wooden legs. The adrenaline started to run out. Whatever bravery I felt was replaced with heart palpitations. I let go of the knife and backed away. Looking at the ruined piece of furniture felt like looking at a corpse. Guilt and panic spread through my chest. I lit up a cigarette, fortified my soul with some more moonshine. The sky was filled with bursts of light. Somewhere off in the distance, people were screaming a countdown. As the nicotine and alcohol spread through my system, I started to calm down. Ripping apart the couch felt like murder as I did it. But with a couple moments to process everything and some chemical help, it seemed just like regular vandalism. I was on the other side of something bizarre. But I was on the other side. A mass of fireworks blasted off at once. It was 2013. With a smoke in my mouth and a bottle in my hand, I greeted the new year. The bright lights in the sky boomed with celebration. The thundering of the fireworks shook the world as it tumbled into a new era. The far-off cheering gave me hope. I stood in the dark, watching the world celebrate, thinking that maybe 2013 would be a good year. That thought was cut short.
Oh, tiger.
Voice in my head slithered.
I told you we weren't done.
I turned around. The couch was still a mess of stuffing, but slowly, ever so slowly, the stuffing started to throb. The yellow foam frothed from the couch towards me, slowly turning blood red.
Come here, tiger. Come here and take a seat.
What do you want? I screamed. Throwing my bottle at the couch, the moonshine hit the wooden frame with force, shattering the bottle and sending shards of glass all throughout the waves of pulsating stuffing. The couch didn't care. The glowing waves of stuffing raised from the ground. They morphed into tentacles. The mud-caped appendages reached out for me.
I want you, tiger. All I want to do is to make you feel good.
The couch said, in a whisper, dipped in rapture.
I want you inside of me.
There was something about that voice which froze me solid. Electricity crackled in the air. The fireworks had just become flickering scenery. The eyes of the universe concentrated. It was just the couch and me. As if my body was not my own, I put the cigarette between my lips and reached out. The pulsing appendages of the couch wrapped around my hands. They beat with life, as if connected to a giant heart or stomach, but they were impossibly cold to the touch. Yet feeling the stuffing move between my fingers sent shivers of pleasure down my spine. The couch squeezed my hands.
Come here, tiger. Let's dance.
The tentacles weren't strong. It felt as if I could break away at any moment, but I didn't want to. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Every single neuron in my conscious mind wanted me to run, to fight, but I was controlled by something much more primal, something from a much darker part of my mind.
Don't try to fight it, tiger. You know you want to be with me. You know you need to be with me.
She laughed as the tentacles wrapped themselves around me.
Wild horses couldn't drag me away.
The couch sang sweetly into my ear.
Wild horses couldn't drag me away.
I stepped from side to side in the embrace of the tentacles. Slowly making my way towards the couch, the voice whispered something in my ear. I moved my head to hear it better. My cigarette was taken away from me as one of the tentacles squirmed itself into my mouth. I was 16 again, holding Saleh in the aftermath of a house party, except I wasn't. Her tongue moved with the same passionate tenderness that it had before, but now it was cold, and I could feel bits of shattered glass peeking out of it. Her kiss tasted like bubble gum and cigarettes, but now there was a hint of iron mixed into it. My mouth filled with my own blood.
Yes. God, tiger, you taste so good. Are you as turned on as I am?
The tentacles checked.
Oh, tiger, we're going to have so much fun.
It slithered the cigarette back into my mouth. I obediently puffed. The stuffing of the couch moved into one massive hole. The last bits of upholstery ripping on their own to allow the blob to gather itself. The tentacles let go of my hands and started to work at my belt. When the stuffing finished its job, it led me towards the heap without touching my hands. The mass of stuffing groaned as it parted its way in the center. A hole opened up. A hole blacker than the darkest night. It was dizzying to look into.
Fuck me, tiger.
The couch growled. I sharply inhaled, making the tip of my cigarette shine in the night.
Put it in, tiger. Put it in and let me take you to a place where you'll never be.
I was so close. The groaning maw spread right in front of me, ready to take me. But as soon as I looked down, something else grabbed my attention. Around my ankles, in my pocket. My phone. My phone was ringing.
Oh, Tiger, don't think about anyone else right now. This is about us.
The couch growled. 2 tentacles reached out, one towards my pocket and one towards my mouth. I was about to close my eyes and prepare for another bloody bubblegum kiss, but as the couch reached for my phone, I managed a passing glance at the screen. The name snapped me out of whatever trance I was in. Saleh! I yelled. The cigarette dropped out of my mouth and fell on the stuffing where it started to sizzle. I grabbed at my phone.
No, you fucking vermin. Come back here.
The couch screamed, but it was too slow. I grabbed my phone and ripped myself away. I tried to run away, but the pants around my ankles tripped me up. I crawled a couple of paces with the phone before picking it up. Hello? There were explosions on the other end. People laughed as they wished each other a happy new year in a foreign tongue. Even while I was a couple meters away from the eldritch mass of couch stuffing, the prospect of my one bit of communication with Saleh being an ass-dial tore through my heart. Hey, she finally said. It wasn't an ass-dial. Hey, I replied. Behind me, the couch was screaming. Its tentacles were reaching for my feet, but I kicked them away. I put my pants back on and stood up. There were more important things to attend to. Happy New Year, Saleh. Happy New Year, James, she said. The couch kept on screeching in my head, but all the noise was blocked out by Saleh's long sigh. I'm sorry, she finally said. I'm sorry that I ran away today. I'm sorry that I didn't answer the door yesterday. I'm sorry I told you to come to Tallinn. I was drunk and lonely. Me too, I said, the blood in my mouth turning sweet. I'm drunk and lonely right now. I turned away from the couch. A sense of warmth traveled down my back. It felt nice to hear her voice again. She laughed, but then her voice went cold. Do you hate me? No. No, I said. I don't think so, at least. The warmth on my back turned to heat. I needed to see her. Saleh, could we meet up for a coffee or something? I just want to talk. There was a silence. Well, it wasn't really a silence. The couch roared with rage behind me, but Saleh was silent, and that's all that mattered. I don't think that would be a good idea, she finally said. I don't think you'll find what you're looking for. I care about you, James. I really do, but we can't keep doing this. We were good together. It was a nice 3 years, but I don't think I can be the person who got hitched to their high school sweetheart. A fever of disappointment burned through my spine. Even though it was below zero outside, I was sweating. I desperately searched for something to say, something to make her change her mind, but words refused to leave my mouth. Maybe one day we can be friends. I want us to be friends. I don't want to lose you, James, but for now, she sighed. I think we should see other people and maybe not see each other. I started to stammer out a reply or a plea or something to make her reconsider, but the phone was slapped out of my hand with fiery force. The screen went trailing through the night until it finally went dark in a pile of snow. My cheeks stung with a burn. Suddenly, I smelt it. The smoke. The warmth I was feeling on my back wasn't the byproduct of the phone call. The warmth came from the fire.
Come here, you vermin.
The tentacled inferno screamed as bits of broken glass sprayed from it. The frame of the couch was indistinguishable from the creature that hid within it. Before me stood a wall of fire. In that wall, there was a hole. Darker than the darkest night, the abyss beckoned to me.
Yes, you vermin. Look at me. Look at the only thing standing between you and happiness.
The couch screamed.
Your woman will be spreading her legs for someone else tonight. All you have left is me.
The flames crackled. The tentacles reached out for me. The maw of the creature opened wide. It could fit me whole. This was no longer about sex. This was erotic suicide. I stared at the fire. Beneath the heartbreak, beneath the booze, beneath the voice that this creature was forcing into my skull, there was a remnant of consciousness. I knew that if I was to give in to the lure of the couch, I would die. I held back as the couch burned. The voice went quiet.
Tiger?
It finally said, with a voice full of sweet sex.
I don't want to hurt you. I love you. I just want the best for you. Let me mend your broken heart.
The tentacles were burning away. Pieces of the burnt stuffing started to drip into the mud.
What else are you going to do? Continue living with a broken heart? Watch her fall for someone else? Show up at their wedding? Tiger, we both know you're better than that. We both know there's a better way.
The moment still haunts me in my dreams. I see myself, fresh out of high school, confused, hurt, alone, staring into that demonic fire, considering what it has to say. I can smell the toxic smoke laced with floral perfume. I can feel the mud squish beneath my feet as I walk towards the couch. I can feel that hot, embracing warmth. If I didn't have friends, I would have burned to death. Or worse, end up as a pile of finely picked bones. Luckily, at the moment when death was luring me in like a moth to a flame, there was a shit-faced Maria to save me. James! Happy New Year! I heard, moments before I crashed down into the mud. She jumped at me. With a running start, I had no chance. May your year be filled with health, wealth, and good sex. She planted a sloppy kiss on my cheek before she registered the fire. Wow! Look at the flames! Carl came running in after her. Maria, you're being very drunk. Stop! He froze and looked at the fire. You've started the fire without us, James. I looked at the couch. The flames had taken most of it, but its mouth was still open.
Last chance, Tiger. If you don't come now, you'll spend the rest of your life living with this heartbreak.
Carl walked over to us, lifted both of us up with minimal effort. For a second, I considered running into the fire. To feel the full force of whatever I had felt the previous nights, but as the flame ate away at the last bits of couch, I just stood and watched. Do you feel better now, James? Carl asked as he placed his paw on my shoulder. Maria put her arm around my waist. The three of us stood there in silence. The couch no longer spoke. It was just a burning piece of furniture. Yes, I finally said.
And in the strangest of ways, I did. I felt much better. Carl went inside, got his guitar, and we had the bonfire we talked about in the morning. Maria didn't last long. She took one pull from the vodka bottle they'd stashed away and then tapped out. Carl and me stayed until sunrise, long after the couch had become nothing but smoldering remains. We finished off the entire bottle, both of us getting too drunk to properly function. I have a faint memory of telling him what happened, of telling him about the voice that loomed in my head, the death of Fritz, of the couch's demands for my flesh. But I can't tell whether that memory is accurate. Carl and me haven't spoken about the couch since, but then again, he isn't much of a talker. The only clear memory I have of the aftermath is the three of us singing Wild Horses by the Stones. His rendition of the song is second only to the way it sounded off my Sony Ericsson when I was 16. Hearing an oldie in the faint light of a near-death experience is nice, but nothing will ever compare to the muffled speakers of teenage love. 2 years later, Carl and Maria tied the knot. My doomed visions of the future were correct in one regard. I was alone at the wedding, yet I wasn't thinking about Sale at the reception. I was thinking about Laura. Laura and me met through Tinder back home, and things seemed to be going really well for 3 months, but when I asked her to join me at the wedding, she saw it as a bit too much of a jump and broke off the relationship. I spent the wedding feeling bummed out, but I definitely didn't feel the need to get sexually involved with any furniture. After Laura came Annie. After Annie came Suzanne, and after Suzanne came, oddly enough, a different Annie. With each ill-fated relationship that passes, the moving on gets easier. Realizing that I don't want to be with the person I'm involved with, or in the worst case, that they don't want to be with me, has become an easier pill to swallow. With every relationship since Sale, breakups have started to feel more like facts of life, rather than the cataclysmic events they were back in the day. I don't think about her much. We still wish each other a happy birthday and the occasional Merry Christmas, but it's been 8 years. We've both grown into different people, yet sometimes on dark nights like these, I think about Sally. I try to imagine what life would have been like if we stayed together. What life would have been like if I moved back to Estonia and took a stab at starting a family. What life would have been like with her. And sometimes, if the night drags and the air is still and sleep won't come, I think about something else. I think about the couch. I think about the couch and wonder what it would have felt like to fuck it.